The alarms blared across the Imperial command bridge, a sound no officer ever wanted to hear. Red lights painted the steel corridors in a harsh glow, reflecting off the polished armor of stunned soldiers. Out beyond the viewing glass, a single human warship drifted, massive, black, and silent. The Empire had seen thousands of vessels in its history, from mining cruisers to dreadnoughts that could split moons. But this was something else. The sensors could barely read it. No heat signature, no energy emissions, no transponder codes. It was as if the ship didn't exist, and yet there it was, blotting out the stars. The Admiral leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the strange silhouette. "That's not possible," he muttered. "No one builds ships like that anymore." But deep down, everyone on the bridge could feel it. Whatever was inside that vessel wasn't supposed to exist. The Empire had spent centuries making sure humanity remained in its place, stripped of power, denied access to advanced shipyards or forbidden technology. Yet somehow, the humans had found something, or built something, that broke every known law of physics. And now it was here, gliding silently toward one of the Empire's most fortified outposts. Whispers ran through the ranks. Some said it was a relic, an ancient ship from before the wars that shattered Earth. Others claimed it was alien, something humans had stolen from deep space. But the longer the Imperial fleet stared at that dark, motionless shape, the more they began to realize that whatever it wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, and it was here for them. On the human side, aboard the ship that had the Empire shaking in its boots, the crew sat in tense silence. The hum of unseen power ran through the hull like a heartbeat. Every system was online, yet barely consuming energy. Their captain, a calm figure with eyes that held more history than anyone should carry, stood in front of the central viewport. "They don't understand what they're looking at," the captain said quietly. "They think we stole it. They think it's just another weapon." A faint smile touched their lips. "But it's not. It's a message." No one spoke. They all knew what that meant. Humanity had been pushed, starved, scattered to the edges of the galaxy. Worlds burned, colonies erased, people sold and forgotten. The Empire had ruled them for generations, certain that humans were too weak, too broken, too divided to rise again. But this ship, the one the Empire now called the Freak, was proof they were wrong. Humans had survived. They had rebuilt, not in open defiance, but in silence, far from the eyes of those who thought them extinct. And when the time came, they hadn't returned with words or demands. They returned with this. Back on the Imperial command bridge, the Admiral barked orders to scan the vessel again to find any weakness, but every attempt failed. Probes disintegrated before touching its surface. Signals were swallowed by interference. Even the Empire's best AI systems couldn't process what they were seeing. "It's rewriting our data," one technician whispered, staring at the corrupted screens. "The ship, it's changing the readings as we take them." The Admiral froze. Ships didn't rewrite data. Ships didn't think like that. Then, without warning, the black ship moved. Slowly, deliberately, it shifted position until its front faced the Imperial flagship. The bridge went silent. Every weapon was armed, every defense shield raised. The Admiral shouted for the fleet to prepare for impact, but no attack came. Instead, a single message appeared on every Imperial channel. Just one line, written in the old human language, a language the Empire had erased centuries ago. "We remember," the Admiral's heart sank. For a moment, the vastness of space seemed to close in around him. He didn't know what scared him more, the words themselves or the quiet, confident power behind them. Because now he understood what the Empire had truly feared all along. Not rebellion, not war, but the possibility that humanity had learned to become something far greater than the sum of its suffering. The lights flickered. The black ship's engines ignited, releasing no fire, no heat, just a ripple that bent the stars around it. Every sensor failed. Every camera went dark. And then it was gone, vanishing as if it had never existed. The fleet was left adrift in silence, their systems scrambled, their pride shattered. Somewhere out there, humanity had awakened, and the Empire knew with cold certainty that it had just seen the beginning of something it could never control. But what was that ship? Where had humans built it? And how many more of them were out there, waiting, watching, preparing to return? Long after the black ship vanished, the Imperial fleet drifted in uneasy silence. The data logs were corrupted beyond repair, but fragments of strange readings remained. Impossible energy levels, gravitational distortions, and signatures that didn't belong to any known technology. The Empire tried to contain the incident, classifying it as a sensor malfunction. But rumors spread faster than light across the networked worlds. Entire forums whispered about the ghost ship of humanity, a vessel so advanced it broke the laws of nature. The Empire could censor reports, but it couldn't stop fear. In the following days, Imperial intelligence worked tirelessly to trace the ship's origin. They searched old archives, restricted colonies, and abandoned shipyards. What they found were faint traces of human movement in sectors long thought uninhabitable, hidden settlements orbiting dead stars, silent beacons transmitting ancient Earth languages, and coded messages buried in civilian traffic. The signs were subtle, but they told a single, terrifying truth. Humanity hadn't died out. They had gone dark, and they had been planning something for a very long time. Inside one of those forgotten outposts, a group of humans gathered in a dim control room lit by flickering monitors. The air was thick with tension and quiet pride. They had watched the footage of the black ship's confrontation 100 times, studying every detail. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol. Built from the remains of ancient designs and knowledge scavenged from old ruins and forgotten databanks, it represented everything the Empire had tried to erase. The humans who created it called it Eidolon, a name that meant both phantom and memory. They had worked in secret for generations, using what little they could salvage from the wreckage of old wars. The Empire's surveillance drones had searched the stars endlessly, but humans learned how to hide, how to disappear, how to move through the cracks of an empire too bloated to notice the dust beneath its boots. And in that dust, they built a legacy. The black ship wasn't the first thing they had made, it was simply the first one the Empire had seen. Back in the Imperial capital, panic rippled through the High Council. They demanded explanations the military couldn't give. How had humans, a species the Empire had deemed primitive, created something that surpassed their best fleets? The scientists who examined the corrupted data spoke of materials that didn't exist on any known planet and power signatures that shouldn't be possible. Some whispered that the humans had uncovered lost pre-imperial relics, technologies from before the collapse, when humanity once roamed the stars freely. Others believed something even more unsettling, that humans had evolved. Amidst the fear, one question echoed in every chamber. What if they come back? The Empire had spent centuries suppressing rebellion, but this was different. You couldn't fight what you couldn't understand. The black ship didn't just appear as a threat, it appeared as a reminder that history could not be erased, that the smallest spark of memory could ignite a revolution. On a distant mining world, a young human worker looked up at the night sky, unaware that history had just shifted. The Empire had forbidden talk of old Earth, but whispers reached even here. People spoke quietly of the ghost ship, of something powerful carrying the forgotten hopes of their kind. The idea spread like a quiet fire. Humans had returned, and they were no longer afraid. But while the Empire scrambled to prepare for a threat it didn't understand, the humans who had built the Eidolon were already in motion. Their networks awakened, their hidden fleets stirred, and their message, "We remember," was only the beginning. Weeks passed, but the Empire could not shake the ghost of what they had seen. Every ship captain in the outer sectors was ordered to stay alert, for anomalous vessels, though most knew what that really meant. The Black Ship had shattered the illusion of imperial control. For the first time in centuries, fear spread not from the Empire, but within it. Entire fleets were recalled, worlds were locked down, and whispers of rebellion began to stir in places once silent. In the capital's intelligence division, Director Halvin stood before a room full of officers and analysts. The holographic image of the Black Ship hovered in the air, reconstructed from the damaged sensor data. "We underestimated them," he said quietly. "The humans didn't vanish. They adapted." Around him, tired faces watched as he pulled up scattered reports from across Imperial space. Stolen cargo ships, missing convoys, power surges near derelict systems. "They're not attacking," he continued. "They're testing us." No one spoke. The thought was too dangerous to voice. If the humans were moving again, it meant they had resources, organization, maybe even allies. Some officers dismissed it as impossible, but deep down they all knew the Empire had grown lazy, drunk on its own power. Centuries of dominance had made them blind. Meanwhile, in a hidden human enclave orbiting a dead world, the leaders of the resistance met in secret. The same quiet captain who had commanded the Eidolon sat among them, surrounded by faces hardened by years of exile. A holographic display showed the Empire's response across dozens of systems. Patrols had doubled. Colonies were under tighter control. Surveillance was everywhere. "They're afraid," one of the younger commanders said. "We finally made them afraid." The captain nodded but remained thoughtful. "Fear isn't victory," they said. "Not yet. The Empire still controls the stars, but now they're listening. That's how it begins." There was a silence in the room as everyone absorbed those words. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the Eidolon. It was the truth that the Empire couldn't destroy. They had erased Earth from the maps, silenced the old stories, rewritten the past. But the Black Ship had reignited memory. Across the colonies, miners, traders, and refugees were whispering again. People who had given up hope were starting to believe they could matter. On an industrial world deep inside Imperial territory, a low-ranking technician named Ryan began collecting fragments of restricted broadcasts. He pieced together clips of intercepted transmissions and coded them into a single phrase: "We remember." The message spread quietly through underground networks, reaching those who still called themselves human even under the Empire's shadow. Some saw it as rebellion, others saw it as hope. Either way, it was something the Empire could not control. At the same time, strange disturbances began to ripple across the outer rim. Imperial scout ships reported sightings of unknown craft, small, fast, and invisible to standard sensors. They didn't engage, but they always appeared near abandoned Imperial outposts or forgotten relic sites, as if searching for something. Every time the Empire sent a fleet to investigate, the ships were gone, leaving behind faint energy trails matching the Eidolon's impossible signature. Back at the capital, Director Halvin grew increasingly desperate. He had served the Empire his entire life, believing its rule was the only thing keeping the galaxy from chaos. But now, he couldn't ignore the truth forming in his own reports. "They've learned how to hide in the data," he told his aides. "Their signals blend with background noise. We can't trace them because they understand us too well. They know our systems. They know us." Across the stars, the humans were watching. In deep space, the Eidolon reappeared, this time not alone. Smaller vessels moved beside it, their shapes sleek and dark, built in the same style. Each one carried no markings, no flags, no identification. Only purpose. They gathered near the ruins of a dead moon once used by the Empire for weapons testing. The captain stood at the command deck again, staring at the cold remains below. "This is where it began," they said, "where they decided we were expendable." The crew said nothing, but the silence was heavy with what they all felt: rage, loss, and the weight of countless generations. They didn't want vengeance, they wanted freedom. The Eidolon's engines hummed to life as new coordinates appeared on the console, coordinates pointing straight toward Imperial space. Far away, in the depths of the Empire's communication hub, Director Halvin received an encrypted alert. His screen flickered once before displaying a short, haunting message. 3 words: "We are coming." And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel anger or defiance, only the quiet, sinking realization that the age of Imperial dominance was ending, and humanity, long forgotten, was finally ready to remind the galaxy who they really were. The Empire's fleets assembled in silence, stretching across the void like a steel wall. Every ship was armed, every weapon charged, yet the air in the command halls felt like a storm waiting to break. Reports from the outer systems poured in, distortions in hyperspace, ghost signals, flashes of dark shapes that appeared and vanished before sensors could lock on. The Empire's most powerful admirals stood ready, but none of them could hide the unease creeping into their voices. They all remembered the black ship and the message it had left behind. Director Halvin watched from the central command tower, the heart of Imperial control. He had spent his entire life believing the Empire's strength was unshakable, but now, as he stared at the live feed of their forces, he realized how fragile that belief had become. The humans weren't just attacking, they were moving like ghosts. Every attempt to predict their next strike failed. Every ambush the Empire planned fell apart. It was as if the humans already knew what the Empire would do before it happened. "They've learned us too well," Halvin whispered. "They've been watching for centuries." Out in the darkness, the Eidolon drifted between shattered asteroids, its hull gleaming with faint light. Inside, the captain stood before a silent crew, their faces reflecting the tension that filled the room. "They've gathered everything they have," the captain said, voice calm but heavy. "They think this will end tonight." The crew exchanged glances. They knew what was coming. The Empire wasn't just defending its territory, it was fighting to keep its illusion alive. From the outer rim, more human ships emerged, their designs varied but united by the same quiet menace. They didn't broadcast signals or challenge the Empire openly. They just appeared, encircling the Empire's outermost defense line. The tension in the void grew unbearable. Imperial scanners screamed warnings, detecting dozens, no hundreds, of untraceable energy readings. "Multiple signatures, unknown classification," shouted one officer. "They're surrounding us." The admiral barked orders, but his voice shook. Meanwhile, within the Imperial capital, civilians began to panic. Strange interference rippled through communication systems. Hollow broadcasts glitched, and for a brief moment, every screen across the Empire flickered with the same image: the black ship drifting in silence, followed by the old human phrase, "We are coming." Then the screens went dark. Entire worlds froze. The message wasn't just military, it was psychological. The Empire had ruled through fear, and now that same fear was turning inward. Director Halvin turned toward the window, watching as the first blips appeared on the horizon. Small, dark shapes moving faster than any Imperial ship could. "They're here," an officer whispered. Alarms blared through the tower. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to warp as the Eidolon and its fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The shockwave rippled across the system, shaking even the massive battle platforms that guarded the Imperial capital. For a heartbeat, time stopped. The two forces, the Empire that had once ruled everything and the humans who had once been its slaves, faced each other across the silent black. Every gun was armed. Every sensor was locked. The tension was unbearable, the kind that made the universe itself seem to hold its breath. On the Eidolon's bridge, the captain looked out at the wall of Imperial ships, a vast field of light and fire. "They still don't understand," the captain murmured. "This isn't about destruction." The ship's core began to hum, light spreading through its dark hull like veins awakening. Across the fleet, human ships mirrored the signal, forming a pattern that the Empire's scanners couldn't decipher. In the command tower, Halvin's screen filled with warnings, space-time distortions, energy readings off every known scale. "What are they doing?" shouted one of his aides. But before anyone could respond, the stars began to bend. The air in the control room grew still, the lights dimming as if the galaxy itself had turned to watch. And then, for the first time in recorded history, the Empire saw what true human power looked like: ancient, patient, and unstoppable. The void trembled. The human fleet began to move. The void rippled as the human fleet advanced, silent and deliberate. The Empire's wall of ships opened fire, unleashing streams of energy that could burn through moons, but every blast curved away, swallowed by invisible distortions surrounding the black vessels. The Eidolon didn't fire back, it just moved closer, gliding through the chaos as if space itself bowed to its will. Then something unexpected happened. The Imperial weapons began to shut down on their own. Entire systems flickered, targeting locks failed, and the once mighty fleet found itself blind in the dark. Director Halvin stared at the readings in disbelief. "That's impossible! They're overriding our power cores remotely!" he shouted, but no one had an explanation. The humans hadn't just built superior ships. They had rewritten the very code of warfare. The Empire's fleets, built on centuries of dominance, were being undone by silence and precision. Yet, just when it seemed like humanity had the upper hand, the unexpected struck. Across the human fleet, lights began to dim. Systems fluctuated. The Eidolon's core flickered, a deep rumble echoing through the ship. "Power levels dropping," one of the engineers said, panic in their voice. "It's not us! They're pulling something from the other side of the system!" The captain frowned, watching the readouts twist into strange symbols. "No, that's not them," they whispered. "That's something else." At the edge of the battlefield, a massive distortion appeared. It wasn't Imperial, and it wasn't human. The stars around it stretched and vanished, replaced by a void so deep it seemed to swallow light. A structure emerged, ancient, mechanical, and vast, as if the bones of a forgotten god had been forged into a machine. Both sides froze. The Imperial scanners went haywire, unable to classify what they were seeing. The humans, too, fell silent, their ships halting in eerie unison. Then a signal broke across every frequency, old and cold, written in a language neither side fully understood. But the humans recognized fragments. It was a warning, one from before the fall of Earth, before the Empire had even existed. The Eidolon's crew stared at the translation as it scrolled across their consoles. "You woke what should have stayed buried." The captain's face turned pale. "It's not a weapon," they said quietly. "It's a vault." The realization spread like wildfire through both fleets. Whatever had appeared out there wasn't part of the human rebellion. It was something built long before either civilization. The Empire's scientists, still scrambling for control, pieced together fragments of history. The ancient archives had mentioned something buried deep in forgotten space. Technology from the first human exodus, when humanity had tried to build something to protect itself from extinction. But if this was that creation, then it had not stayed dormant by accident. The great structure began to awaken, energy arcs spread across its surface, lightning weaving through its colossal frame. The sensors screamed warnings, detecting gravitational shifts strong enough to tear planets apart. The Empire's admiral ordered an immediate retreat, but their engines wouldn't start. Neither would the humans. Whatever this thing was, it had already seized control of the surrounding space. Director Halvin watched in horror as the data flooded in. "It's rewriting everything," he said, voice trembling. "Our systems, our networks, it's merging them." The Empire's AI mainframe, the very core of their power, started transmitting strange symbols identical to the ones seen on the human consoles. Across the fleets, both Imperial and human crews realized the same thing. The entity didn't care who had built what. It saw both sides as the same, creations born from the same ancient seed. On the Eidolon, the captain took a step forward, eyes fixed on the vast machine. "It's responding to us," they murmured. "It knows what we are." The ship's hull began to resonate with a low hum, and images flickered on the main screen, memories of Earth, of cities long gone, of oceans and skies that hadn't been seen in millennia. The crew stared in awe and dread. The machine wasn't just awakening, it was remembering. Then, without warning, the entire battlefield lit up in blinding white. The Empire's command tower went dark. Every ship, every machine, every network was suddenly connected by a single pulse of light. For one impossible moment, humanity and the Empire shared the same vision, a glimpse of something vast and terrible waiting beyond the stars. When the light faded, silence returned. The massive structure loomed over them, fully awake now, its surface glowing like molten metal. The captain gripped the console tightly, their voice barely above a whisper. "We thought we were fighting the Empire," they said. "But this was never just about us." And out there, beyond the broken stars, the ancient voice spoke once more, shaking the void with its final message. The Makers return. The cycle begins. The light that had engulfed the fleets faded slowly, leaving behind a silence so deep it felt unnatural. Every ship floated adrift, powerless and disoriented. The great structure, an ancient construct older than both the Empire and the human resurgence, stood in the center of the void, its molten glow pulsing like a heartbeat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the Empire's officers, trained to follow command above all else, could only stare at the impossible sight before them. The stars themselves seemed dimmer now, swallowed by the machine's faint golden haze. On the Eidolon, the captain steadied themselves, staring into the glow. The air on the bridge felt heavy, thick with static. "Status report," they said, their voice echoing unnaturally through the silence. A technician hesitated before replying. "All systems are offline except for life support. Whatever that thing did, it reached into our core and rewrote something. It's like our ship doesn't know what it is anymore." The captain's eyes drifted toward the view screen where the Empire's largest battleship floated nearby, motionless. For the first time, the two fleets shared a kind of fragile equality. Neither side had control. "So this is what they were afraid of," the captain murmured. "Not us, not rebellion, but this." Director Halvan, trapped within the command tower, felt the same weight. His screens flickered with fragments of data, symbols looping endlessly, patterns repeating like a heartbeat. Then the central console spoke in a calm, synthetic tone, one that no one in the Empire had ever heard before. "Identity confirmed," it said. "Human lineage, 99.7% match." Halvan froze. "What did it say?" The technician beside him repeated the line, voice shaking. It identified us as human." The words hit harder than any explosion. For centuries, the Empire had denied humanity's true past, claiming itself to be a higher order of evolution, descendants of those who left behind their primitive roots. But now the machine had spoken, and the truth was undeniable. The Empire wasn't humanity's conqueror, it was humanity's descendant. Across the fleets, systems flickered back to life, but they no longer obeyed commands. The ship consoles displayed the same message over and over: integration sequence in progress. The great construct began to hum again, its light intensifying. Waves of data surged through every vessel, linking them together. It was connecting them, Empire and human alike, into something larger. On the Eidolon, the captain realized what was happening. "It's merging our systems," they said, voice low. It's trying to rebuild what was lost. But what does that mean? One of the engineers asked. The captain hesitated, looking out at the massive structure pulsing brighter with every passing second. It means it doesn't see us as enemies. It sees us as pieces of the same thing. Suddenly, the bridge lights dimmed again. The air turned cold. A transmission came through, not through comms, but directly into every mind across both fleets. A voice, neither human nor machine. It was calm, almost sorrowful. "You were never meant to destroy one another," it said. "You were the same. Fractures of the same beginning." Images flashed within everyone's vision. Earth's final days, the wars that had shattered it, and the desperate attempt to send fragments of humanity across the stars. Some colonies had survived, evolving into what became the Empire. Others had scattered, rebuilding quietly in the shadows. The two lineages had grown apart, one forgetting the other, until time turned kin into conqueror. Director Halvin clutched the console, breathing heavily as the truth settled over him. "All this time," he whispered, "we were fighting ourselves." The voice continued, steady and powerful. "The cycle of division ends now. Unity will be restored." The construct's light flared, and suddenly both fleets began to move, not under their control. The ships shifted into alignment around the machine, forming a massive ring. Power surged through their hulls, linking them in perfect synchronization. "It's using us!" shouted an officer aboard the Empire's flagship. "We're part of something bigger, some kind of activation sequence." The Eidolon's crew scrambled to respond. "We're losing control of everything," said the engineer. "If this continues, it'll tear space apart." The captain stared at the readings, heart pounding. "No, it's not tearing space apart," they said. "It's opening something." A rift began to form at the construct's center, light bending into an enormous spiral. It wasn't destructive. It was a gateway. On the other side was something blinding and infinite, a sea of light and movement. The humans watched in awe. The Empire watched in fear. Director Halvin shouted into his communicator, "Shut it down! Whatever it's doing, stop it!" But the system ignored every command. The machine spoke again, softer this time. "The Makers must return." The captain's eyes widened. "It's calling them back," they said. "Whoever built it, wherever they went, it's bringing them home." Then, as if to confirm their words, the rift rippled, and a massive shadow appeared beyond it. It was not a ship, not exactly, but something that felt alive. The sensors struggled to define its shape. It shifted like light through water, immense and incomprehensible. The voice echoed one final time. "The ones who left return to find what remains." Panic erupted across the Imperial fleet. Some tried to flee, others opened fire in desperation, but their weapons were useless. The energy from the construct absorbed everything. The Eidolon's crew could only watch as the shadow drew closer. "It's not an enemy," the captain whispered. "It's what we came from." And then, in a blinding instant, everything stopped. The rift closed. The construct's light faded. All was silent again. The massive fleets drifted, intact but lifeless. Slowly, power returned to each ship, and communications flickered back on. The great structure now stood dormant, its purpose fulfilled, or so it seemed. Director Halvin stood trembling. "What happened?" he demanded. "What did it do?" On the Eidolon, the captain finally received a single encrypted message, one only they could see. The words were simple, yet chilling. "The return has begun. Prepare them." The captain stared at the screen, realizing the truth. The construct hadn't just connected the two civilizations, it had marked them. The shadow that had appeared wasn't gone, it was coming. As the fleets cautiously regained movement, the Empire's flagship sent a transmission to the Eidolon. Halvin's voice came through, strained but sincere. "We can't fight this," he said. "Whatever's coming, We'll need each other." For the first time, the human captain nodded. "Then we start over," they said. "Together." But before the words could settle, the stars around them shifted. The constellations were no longer the same. The entire sector had moved, displaced by whatever the construct had done. When the scanners recalibrated, the results made everyone freeze. They weren't where they had been. The coordinates matched no known galaxy. No chart recognized the space around them. The construct was gone, but they were somewhere new, somewhere far beyond the edge of mapped reality. The captain looked out at the unfamiliar stars. "It didn't end the cycle," they whispered. "It moved it." Director Halvin's voice came through again, barely audible. "Then the real beginning is here." And as the fleets drifted into this strange, uncharted space, a faint hum echoed once more from the void. The same rhythm as before, faint but growing stronger. Whatever had returned through that rift was still out there, watching, waiting. And this time it wasn't just humanity's history at stake, it was its future. The fleets drifted quietly in the strange new space, surrounded by stars that no chart recognized. The instruments read no known coordinates, no nearby systems, no signal traces from the Empire's network. It was as if the galaxy itself had been left behind. Both the Imperial and human ships floated together, stripped of the barriers that once divided them. There were no enemies here, only survivors trying to make sense of what had happened. The void was silent, but it didn't feel empty. It felt watchful, like the universe itself was waiting to see what they would do next. On the Eidolon, the crew worked in quiet focus, trying to restore full control. The captain stood at the viewport, watching the faint light from distant stars shimmer against the ship's dark hull. "Any sign of the construct?" they asked softly. The technician shook their head. "Nothing, sir. It's gone, like it was never there." The captain nodded slowly, though their mind refused to accept it. Something that powerful didn't simply disappear. It had done what it was meant to do, and then left them to decide what came next. Across the fleet, communications reopened between ships. The Empire's voice, once sharp and commanding, now sounded uncertain. Director Halvin appeared on the Eidolon's main screen, his face pale but steady. "Our systems are running again," he said, "but every attempt to plot a course home leads nowhere. It's as if we're outside the known universe." The captain met his gaze. "Then maybe this is where we were meant to start over." Halvin looked away for a moment, then back again. "You think that was its plan, to take us away?" "I think it gave us a choice," the captain replied, "to end the cycle of conquest and revenge, to rebuild, not as rulers or rebels, but as one people." For the first time, Halvin didn't argue. The arrogance that had once defined him had faded. He had seen the same vision as everyone else: the wars of old Earth, the rise of the Empire, the exile of those who refused to kneel. He understood now that all of it was one long, broken story. "We have centuries of hate between us," he said quietly. "But maybe that's what the construct wanted us to face. Not it. Not some cosmic threat. Ourselves." The captain gave a faint smile. "Then maybe we finally have a chance to fix it." As days turned into weeks, the fleets began to work together. Engineers from both sides met through shared transmissions, comparing notes and repairing damaged systems. The old tension didn't vanish overnight, but something new began to form. Trust built not from loyalty, but from necessity. The Empire's soldiers, once trained to see humans as lesser, now relied on them to survive. And the humans, long hardened by hiding, began to see that not all within the Empire were cruel. Many had simply been born into lies. In time, the first Joint Council formed aboard the largest neutral ship in the fleet. The meeting was tense, filled with long silences and cautious words, but it was real. The two sides shared what they knew about their origins, piecing together the fragments of truth left by the construct. From the data retrieved, they learned that the Great Machine was built by humanity's first Exodus fleet, an ancient safeguard meant to preserve knowledge should civilization ever collapse. It had been waiting in the dark, sleeping through eons, until human technology evolved enough to awaken it again. But it hadn't brought them here by accident. Its activation sequence had been deliberate. The construct had detected the growing pattern of conflict, the endless cycle repeating through generations. It understood that if the old galaxy couldn't change, then the only solution was to give humanity a clean beginning, a place where memory could guide them, not control them. The Eidolon's captain recorded this in the first log of the new colony record. We were enemies for too long. The construct took that choice from us and replaced it with a harder one, to live together or die apart. History has given us too many warnings. This time, we will listen. Weeks later, they discovered a nearby planet, a small, calm world with an atmosphere fit for life. The first scouts landed cautiously, expecting danger, but found only endless plains, blue skies, and oceans untouched by any hand. The soil was rich, the air clean. It was a beginning, pure and uncertain. They named it Haven. The Empire's ships carried the technology to build, and the humans brought the will to endure. Together, they established a settlement, not of rulers and subjects, but of equals. The first structures were simple, just shelters and power hubs, but their meaning was far greater than their design. For the first time in recorded history, both sides worked under the same sun. At night, the captain often walked along the shoreline, listening to the quiet hum of distant construction and the waves brushing against smooth stones. The stars above were unfamiliar, but somehow comforting. Each time they looked up, they thought of the construct, the vast, ancient guardian that had watched over them. It had not destroyed them. It had saved them in the only way possible, by forcing them to confront what they had become. Director Halvin joined the captain one evening by the water. "Our people are settling," he said, his tone softer than before. "It's strange. I spent my whole life defending the Empire, believing it was humanity's perfection. Now I see it was just our fear wearing armor." The captain nodded slowly. "Fear built the Empire, but maybe hope can build what comes after." Halvin smiled faintly, the first real smile the captain had seen from him. "Maybe you're right. Maybe that's what the construct wanted us to remember." The horizon glowed with the faint light of dawn, casting gold across the waves. The new colony's lights shimmered in the distance, and the faint sound of laughter carried through the air. Children from both sides playing together, unaware of the centuries that had led here. It wasn't perfection, but it was a start. Later, as the captain recorded their final log entry, they paused, choosing their words carefully. "The Empire is gone, but humanity remains. We are no longer divided by fear or power. We are wanderers who found our way back to ourselves. The stars may be strange, but they are ours again. And wherever we go from here, we will go together." The log ended, and for a moment there was only quiet. Then, from far beyond the edge of the system, a faint pulse of light flickered, gentle, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The captain watched it appear and fade, a distant echo of the construct's glow. They smiled, understanding what it meant. It wasn't a warning or a threat. It was a reminder. Humanity had been given a second chance, not as conquerors, not as rebels, but as survivors who finally remembered who they were. And somewhere, out there in the vast dark, the stars seemed to whisper the same ancient truth the construct had carried all along. We remember.